We all have a ticket in our back pocket, a ticket to oblivion. We don't know when we're going to use it, but we know it's there. We're the only animal born both unfinished, we have free will, and aware that we will die. We make, or we try to make, choices about our life and about our death. We're experiencing now a new kind of life skill. I call it death awareness. Now, death has always been in our gut, right? It's always been in our mind. It's the core of life, but now it's coming out of the closet. We have to talk about it. Blame the baby boomers. They always demand attention. Now they're dying, so we have to talk about it. I'm not a boomer. I'm the tail end of the beats. I don't know how many of us are still around. One of the most important questions is not how will I die or when will I die. It is, will I have truly lived before I die? One of the most common laments at deathbeds is I didn't live my life, and now it's too late. I want something more for you. In Japan, they have karaoke bars and lounges where men go and they sing with tears coming down their faces with great passion. The same song. The number one song is, I Did It My Way. And I think that emotion is because they know in some part of themselves that it'll be very hard to do it their way. The last thing my father said to me before he committed suicide at 56 was, I didn't live my life. He gave me a gift. I didn't know it then, but it was a gift to look carefully at my own life so I would not in turn break my child's heart. And so I started trying to live poet Mary Oliver's words, to let the soft animal of my body love what it loves. Death awareness, it lowers the hidden physical and psychological costs of our being mortal. It minimizes regret. If you can live as if you were already dead, you can make very different choices. You realize that the very best deal, even the best revenge, is a good life and a good death. Death awareness, understanding that there are all sorts of limits. That's why people, I think, who survive a life-threatening illness, many of them say it was the best thing that ever happened to them because it shocked them. It shocked them into a different perspective about their life. So let's check you out. Is your heart beating? Huh? Okay, make sure. All right. All right, take a deep breath. You can walk, right? You can hike. You can dance. You can work. You can sleep. You can love. You still have the immense power of life. The question is, how do we use it? The reward of embracing mortality, it feels like what psychologists describe as flow. When you're using your highest skills, an intense challenge, whether it's art or music or science or skydiving or scuba or mountain climbing, you want to go higher and deeper and you feel fully alive. That's the state of flow. My friend Mike became a quadriplegic at 24, motorcycle accident. He came out of his despair when he realized that he still had his passionate mind, that he could reach the state of euphoria and focus that is that state of flow. It's a state of awareness. Now, can you recall a time when you felt so happy, so excited. Maybe you were hiking in Mount Rainier, or looking at the stars. I mean, if you leave Seattle, you can see the Milky Way. It's really extraordinary. Maybe you just finished a big project, or you're holding a grandchild. And you may find yourself saying for the first time, I feel I have enough. I feel complete. You might even go so far as to say, this would be a good day to die. But no, we always want more time. Okay, so promise me, you'll keep wearing your seatbelt. A single moment of flow is, it's like an aha. You know, that explosive moment of understanding. What death awareness gives you is a continuing state of flow. You feel wholly alive. It feels wonderful. It's like an orgasm. That's why, well, you know the French call orgasm petit mort, which means the little death, because you transcend yourself. A state of flow lets you transcend yourself. Now, the opposite of that happy, comfortable feeling is when you don't feel complete. You don't feel satisfied. You feel anxious. You go for a walk, and I call them shame shots. You're just walking, and then something comes through your mind. Did I do that? Oh my God, did that happen? Or what I also call moth memories. They flit through your mind. They're remembrances of losses, humiliations. And all of a sudden, your body, your psyche is flooded. That feeling is the opposite of flow. Death awareness gives you control over those memories. You know why? Because you can imagine all the way to the end of your life, then you can back up, and you can enjoy the good memories, but you can change the endings of the rest of them. If you're imagining all the way to the end, you can clear the unfinished business of the bad memories. You can take control of your entire life. I know it takes a lot of imagination, but I don't think you'll have any trouble. You can decide which memories to keep and which not. Now, what would you do if you were free from all the bad memories? What would you be? What if you only had 6 months to live? What would you choose to do? All right, let's take death awareness a step further. Can you imagine yourself dead? The ego chill, right? All of that knowledge, that experience, that maintenance, gone. Right? That complex, excited brain of yours silenced. It's a very hard thing to do at any age. But Dr. John Barrett, experienced with death, had no trouble. He said, when I am gone, there's nothing left. It's like the clippings, of hair on the bottom, on the barbershop floor. Just sweep it away. If you want to know who I was or who I am, ask my children. Ask my students. That's me. Physicians know death and dying. They make a personal treaty with death. And they make different choices. They don't choose, most of them, the extreme measures they recommend to their patients. They choose palliative care. They choose suicide. They choose to go home and drink martinis. It's true, there's research. In England, it's gin and tonics, but it's basically the same idea. Now, if you can see a dead body, do it, okay? If you can help the dying, do it. Touching makes so much difference. If that's too hard, too creepy, too morbid, then touch a dead animal. Now that probably seems even creepier. But I was, as a kid, we were told it was dirty, remember? Dirty, don't touch that. But you must touch life and death. I recently picked up the body of a great blue heron. A neighbor had shot it with his .22 to protect his pond fish. When I picked it up, it was still warm. But that extraordinary bird I had seen in flight, it was like holding up a broken kite. It was weightless. And death seems weightless. It sort of flutters out there somewhere, and we don't know the drag that it has on our life if we have not made sense of it. Do you know what people look like when they die? If you've seen a dead body, when the circulation stops, you shrink. Your face becomes gaunt. Everything kind of becomes grayer. It is so clear that the person is not there, that there's only a husk left. It's life-changing. If it's a good death, you're reassured. If it's a hard death, you're traumatized. We think children are afraid of death, but they're not. They like zombies. They already conduct burial rituals for dead birds. The stories are to make adults comfortable, not children. But death isn't just a myth. Death is a reality. It's not like the Easter Bunny. It's a very different issue. And it's interesting that we're not sure when children are old enough. I'm not sure when adults are old enough. The avoidance of mortality keeps many of us, I think, waiting, hoping, postponing our life as if there was another life. We lose track then of this life. We rush around as we keep hearing, and we buy things to put around us to keep us safe. We're like hoarders. Death awareness, again, is the opposite of that emptiness. You feel alive, you feel natural, you feel whole. As your ego fades, you gain a passionate, transcendent way to live. You can feel it in your bones. Older people like me, we fear being weak, we fear being dependent, we fear being in pain, we fear being disgusting. We don't want to die, hooked up to machines in hospitals or being raced to an emergency room, where we're going to get zapped. We want to die in our own way, usually in our own bed. Now, the antidote to all of these fears is really talking about them. Talk to your friends, talk to your families, and start early. I talked to my 15 and 16-year-old grandchildren, and they said, "We've never thought about it." And I said, "Well, just give it a minute." Because you're making all of these decisions, and at some point, they'll become important. My mom at 93 fell down, broke her hip. They took her to the emergency room. My son and I got the call. We rushed down there, and she's in a gurney, and we lean over the gurney, and we say, "Mom, this doctor says that he can give you a new hip." And Mom says, No, I'm bored. I've been bored for 3 years. I'm ready to die. Just get me something for the pain. So we got morphine, and she was gone the next morning. My mom had always lived her life fully. She belonged to a motorcycle group called the Retreads. She knew how to live, and she knew how to die. Journalist Stephen Sotloff, if you heard the story, at 31, he faced death at the hands of ISIS. I believe he was fully aware that he used his time in captivity to make peace with his fate, but he also wanted to give something to us. These are his reported last words: "Live your life to the fullest. Fight to be happy. Everyone has 2 lives. The second one begins when you realize you only have one." Writer Christopher Hitchens, at 62, was dying of cancer. He wrote a frank account, and he said, "The thing about death is that you're at a really great party, and you have to leave. But the party is still going on." Death before we're ready is tragic, but it is painful beyond belief to face death not feeling you have lived your own life. There's so much sorrow and regret, whether it's for your life or for someone else. My late husband, Ted, was diagnosed with brain cancer at 55. They told us he had 9 months to live, and then not a single doctor or specialist after that mentioned death. And Ted had never talked about his feelings. He didn't want to talk about death. He didn't really accept that it could happen in 9 months. We were unable to talk openly about what was happening. I was unprepared. I made so many mistakes. I could have eased our journey. I want you to have fewer regrets. Now, it wasn't all failure. We created our own rituals. We had these pizza and beer parties in the afternoon. He was a marine attorney, and the amazing, wonderful fish guys would come by and sit with us. Ted gained weight. He didn't lose weight, and I said to the doctor, "Is this a problem?" He said, "No." He said, "If I had what he had, I'd be doing what you're doing." And we capped it off with ice cream. We ended up at one point with 27 cartons. On the table, everybody had a spoon, and we would pass them around, and we convinced a Hungarian visitor that this was a normal American ritual. And I finally made a decision that maybe we have to live thin, but I'm gonna die chubby. It's all in the timing, okay? You have to work it out. Only in the last days did I understand what was on Ted's mind. For the first time, he talked about being afraid, about being alone. I told him he would never be alone. He pulled me close as we fell asleep. In the morning, I told him again, and he tried to laugh. Then he slipped into a coma. The next day at noon, on the winter solstice, he died. And the last words I hope he heard were, "I will be with you. You will never be alone." Do you have your last words? Do you know what you want to say? Do you know what you want to hear? Figure it out. Then they'll be there when you need them. But more important, you will start living them. They will guide your life. Death awareness pulls all of humanity together. We're all part of that intricate beauty of the life, of nature, of this planet, the light, and the dark. I am of an age when my British mother would say the birds are beginning to fall off their perches. I learned my death and dying lessons late. I want you to learn them early. It will enrich your life. Know what's important to you. Minimize regret. Imagine your death. Touch death. Give a death plan to a loved one. It's a loving thing to do. Envision your life story all the way to the end so you can back up and make changes. Repeat your last words and enjoy the party. I hope that we can talk and conspire together. Conspire from the Latin. It means to breathe together, to conspire and breathe together for a good life and for a good death. All over this world, every second of every day, people are living and dying. Now, you may feel very alone sometimes, but you're not. You still have the immense power of life. Honor that life. Talk about death.